In the grand hierarchy of global power, we are taught to look at nations, flags, and elected officials. We are conditioned to believe that the ultimate authority rests within the walls of parliaments, congresses, and central banking institutions. But, if you strip away the political theater and analyze the raw mathematical mechanics of global capitalism, the illusion of nation-state sovereignty rapidly dissolves. Power in the 21st century does not wear a crown or hold office. It operates quietly from a glass tower in New York. Welcome to the final business blueprint. BlackRock. Controlling an astronomical $14 trillion in assets under management, BlackRock is not merely an investment corporation, it is the apex economic sovereign of the modern world. To comprehend the sheer magnitude of $14 trillion is to realize that this single private firm dictates a pool of capital larger than the entire gross domestic product of Japan, Germany, India, and the United Kingdom combined. Every facet of your daily existence, from the device in your hand to the energy powering your home, is tethered to this unseen gravitational well. If you buy groceries, take medication, board an airplane, or stream content, you are actively participating in a closed-loop system dominated by BlackRock. They are the single largest, most influential shareholder in the global tech triumvirate: Apple, Microsoft, and Alphabet. They hold the voting blocks that control international defense contractors, global supply chains, and the world's most vital banking institutions. Yet, to the average consumer walking the streets, they are completely invisible. This is not an accident. It is the ultimate corporate design. Absolute dominance achieved through absolute anonymity. Founded in 1988 by Larry Fink, BlackRock understood a fundamental shift in the geometry of capitalism. True power does not belong to those who build physical factories or manufacture physical goods. True power belongs to the gatekeepers of capital, the master architects who decide which companies receive the liquidity to survive, which industries are allowed to quietly starve, and how the collective wealth of human civilization is distributed across the digital ledger. To understand BlackRock's true dominion, you must realize that their $14 trillion is only the surface of the matrix. The real weapon of global control is not just the cash they deploy, but an omniscient, self-learning digital intelligence known as Aladdin. Aladdin, an acronym for Asset, Liability, Debt, and Derivative Investment Network, is the invisible cognitive operating system of global finance. It does not merely manage BlackRock's portfolio, it monitors, calculates, and stress tests the risk parameters for over $200 trillion of global wealth. That is nearly 10% of all the financial assets in existence on planet Earth. Every major central bank, the world's largest sovereign wealth funds, massive pension plans, and rival Wall Street firms all plug their data directly into Aladdin's servers. They have voluntarily surrendered their autonomy to a single algorithmic mind because Aladdin possesses a level of data sovereignty that no human institution can replicate. It tracks millions of variables simultaneously. A sudden political shift in Latin America, a weather anomaly threatening microchip factories in Taiwan, a minor regulatory update in the European Union. Aladdin processes these chaotic data streams, running billions of predictive simulations every second to foresee market fractures before they occur. This is the ultimate evolution of cognitive capitalism. BlackRock does not guess where the market is going. They run the software that dictates the probabilities of reality. By centralizing the risk analysis of the entire Western financial system into a single algorithmic brain, they have created a terrifying reality. If you control the software that calculates the risk of the world, you don't just participate in the global market. You own the lens through which the world sees financial survival. To the casual student of economics, the free market is defined by competition. We are told that Coke fights Pepsi, Apple battles Samsung, and Ford clashes with General Motors. This illusion of choice is the bedrock of democratic capitalism. But if you open the corporate registries of these supposedly bitter rivals and trace the ownership structures to the very top, you will find a startling systemic reality. The competition is dead. They are owned by the exact same masters. This is the business blueprint of the index fund monopoly, a silent coup orchestrated by BlackRock and its closest ally, Vanguard. Together, these two institutions manage a combined pool of capital approaching $25 trillion. Through the invention of passive investing and exchange-traded funds, or ETFs, they have executed a flawless consolidation of global corporate governance. When an average investor buys an index fund tracking the S&P 500, BlackRock takes that capital and buys shares in every single company on the index. Over 3 decades, this compounding process has made BlackRock the single largest institutional shareholder in over 90% of the companies listed in the United States. This is known as common ownership, and it has fundamentally broken the mechanics of the free market. Why would an executive at an airline company aggressively compete to bankrupt a rival when BlackRock owns the largest voting bloc in both companies? The incentives for true competition have been completely neutralized. BlackRock and Vanguard form a duopoly of capital that sits above the market, holding the ultimate proxy voting power. They do not need to invent new products or run factories. By holding the keys to the index, they have established an inescapable financial toll booth on human productivity, extracting a percentage of every dollar generated by global industry, while quietly directing the corporate policies of the entire Western world from behind closed doors. To control the capital markets of the world is to control the oxygen of global commerce. But BlackRock's business blueprint goes infinitely deeper than mere financial starvation or liquidity injection. It is about the structural engineering of corporate behavior itself. For over a decade, Larry Fink wielded a weapon known as ESG, environmental, social, and governance metrics, not as a sentimental charity framework, but as an absolute compliance mechanism. In his legendary annual letters to global CEOs, Fink laid down an uncompromising ultimatum. If your corporation does not actively transform its behavioral architecture to align with our metrics, we will vote against your directors, choke your access to capital, and let your enterprise wither in the shadows of the index. This was the era of behavior compulsion, where BlackRock functioned as a global ideological police force, compelling multinational boards to prioritize stakeholder capitalism over immediate raw profits. However, as we analyze the contemporary financial horizon, a massive, calculated pivot is taking place within the cognitive empire. The raw, philosophical rhetoric of ESG is being quietly shelved, replaced by a ruthless new doctrine: industrial realism and transition investing. BlackRock has recognized that the old global model is fracturing under the weight of trade wars, national self-reliance, and the staggering, unprecedented energy demands of the artificial intelligence infrastructure buildout. The micro is now the macro. The AI revolution cannot run on digital code alone. It requires an astronomical surge in physical power, data centers, and raw infrastructure leverage. Consequently, BlackRock's strategy has evolved from punishing carbon-heavy industries to aggressively financing their transformation. They are buying up global logistics hubs, funding massive grid expansions, and positioning themselves as the ultimate bridge between public credit and private transition infrastructure. They aren't abandoning their grip on behavior, they are optimizing it. They have shifted the battlefield from boardrooms to the literal power plants of civilization. In this new matrix, dominance is no longer defined by a moral scorecard, but by who owns the physical energy grids and the sovereign infrastructure that prevents the artificial intelligence brain of the future from turning off. When an institution reaches a scale where it manages $14 trillion in physical assets, monitors $200 trillion in global risk, and finances the literal energy grids of the artificial intelligence revolution, the traditional definition of a corporation ceases to apply. BlackRock has transcended the boundaries of Wall Street. It has evolved into something far more profound and far more terrifying: a privatized, sovereign operating system for global governance. In times of supreme economic crisis, governments do not turn to their own academics or elected officials for salvation. They turn to BlackRock. During the catastrophic market fractures of 2008, the global pandemic shutdowns of 2020, and the multi-trillion-dollar restructuring of the Western banking system, the United States Federal Reserve and European central banks hired BlackRock to manage the cleanup. They effectively outsourced the monetary policy of the Western world to a private entity. This is the ultimate business blueprint of sovereign capture. BlackRock sits at the apex of a feedback loop where they write the risk assessment software, advise the governments on financial regulations, and then deploy the multi-trillion-dollar capital pools that exploit those very regulations. They have created a perpetual motion machine of compounding authority. Rulers change, political parties rise and fall, and empires dissolve into historical footnotes, but the mathematical sovereignty of BlackRock remains untouched. They are the architects of the new corporate feudalism, a world where individual choice is secondary to algorithmic necessity, and where nation-states are merely regional administrative offices for a centralized global ledger. The blueprint is complete. The software is running. The gravity is absolute. And in this masterclass of absolute power, the world doesn't just run on capital, it runs on BlackRock.